Jacob Fatu just sent the most violent message in WWE history. Jacob Fatu didn't just attack Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed last night, he annihilated them in the most calculated, most savage, most unforgiving display of Samoan retribution WWE has ever allowed on television. The Samoan werewolf just proved why the Anoa'i family produces the most dangerous wrestlers on the planet by systematically destroying two of Raw's most protected monsters in a revenge assault so brutal that even hardcore fans are questioning whether WWE crossed the line between entertainment and actual violence. This wasn't a wrestling match. This wasn't even a typical revenge beatdown. This was warfare executed with military precision by a man who's been waiting 3 weeks for the perfect moment to make Bron and Bronson pay for their cowardly backstage ambush. And what Jacob delivered was so visceral, so personal, so absolutely merciless that both men are now in the hospital dealing with legitimate injuries while Jacob stands tall as the most feared individual on Monday Night Raw. But here's what makes this even more significant: Jacob didn't act alone. Samoan SWAT, his brothers, his family, his tactical unit orchestrated this revenge with such perfect coordination that it exposes just how outmatched Bron and Bronson were from the moment they decided to cross a Samoan warrior. This wasn't just payback, this was a public execution designed to send an unmistakable message to the entire WWE roster: you don't touch Jacob Fatu without facing severe consequences. Hit that like button and subscribe to Wrestling News CC, because I'm about to break down exactly how Jacob's revenge unfolded, why this assault changes the entire power dynamic on Raw, and why Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed just learned the hardest lesson of their careers: when you provoke a member of the Anoa'i dynasty, you better be prepared for war. Let me walk you through this masterpiece of revenge storytelling, because the execution was absolute perfection. For 3 weeks since Bron and Bronson jumped Jacob in a parking lot ambush, Jacob has stayed silent. No revenge promos. No threats on social media. No public acknowledgement of the attack. Just eerie, calculated silence that made Bron and Bronson increasingly comfortable. That comfort was their fatal mistake. Last night's Raw opened with Bron Breakker scheduled for a match against a mid-card opponent. Standard showcase designed to make Bron look dominant. Bronson Reed at ringside as insurance. Everything proceeding normally. Bron's in the ring working the match when suddenly the lights cut. Complete darkness. When they return, Jacob Fatu is standing on the stage. Not running down the ramp in emotional fury. Just standing there with those predator eyes locked on the ring, radiating an intensity that makes the entire arena go silent. Bron and Bronson immediately tense up. They know what's coming. But what they don't know is how it's coming, and that uncertainty is what makes them vulnerable. Jacob raises one hand and snaps his fingers. That simple gesture triggers chaos. Samoan SWAT members emerge from the crowd, not from backstage where security could intercept them, but from the audience where they'd been positioned all night waiting for this exact moment. 6 Samoan warriors surrounding the ring from all sides, cutting off every escape route. Bron tries to bail through the crowd. Blocked. Bronson attempts to escape up the ramp. Blocked. Every exit is sealed by Samoan SWAT members who aren't there to wrestle, they're there to ensure their targets can't escape what's about to happen. Then Jacob moves. He walks down that ramp with the deliberate pace of someone who knows his prey is trapped, and there's no rush. Every step builds tension. The crowd is on their feet because they can feel the violence that's about to erupt. Jacob slides into the ring and the assault begins. But this isn't wild, emotional revenge, this is systematic destruction. Jacob goes straight for Bron with a super kick that drops him instantly. Then a Samoan drop so devastating the ring literally shakes. Bron tries to get up, Jacob hits him with a hip attack in the corner that looks like it cracks ribs. But Jacob's not done. Not even close. He drags Bron to the center of the ring, signals to the crowd, and climbs to the top rope. 300 pounds of Samoan fury balancing on the turnbuckle. The crowd is roaring because they know what's coming but can't believe Jacob's actually going to do it. Jacob launches himself with a moonsault that defies physics. A man his size shouldn't move like that. Shouldn't rotate that cleanly. Shouldn't land with that precision. But he does, and the impact when he crashes down on Bron sounds like a car accident. Bron's body goes limp. He's not selling. He's done. Meanwhile, Samoan SWAT has grabbed Bronson Reed and they're holding him at ringside, forcing him to watch what Jacob does to his partner. Making sure Bronson understands that his turn is coming and there's nothing he can do to prevent it. Jacob stands over Bron's unconscious body, then turns his attention to Bronson. Samoan SWAT releases him and pushes him into the ring. Bronson, normally one of the most intimidating big men in WWE, looks legitimately terrified because he just watched Jacob dismantle Bron with surgical precision. Bronson tries to talk his way out. Tries to apologize. Says the attack 3 weeks ago was just business and nothing personal. Jacob's response? A headbutt so stiff that Bronson's knees buckle immediately, blood starting to flow from a cut above his eye. What happens next is even more brutal than what Jacob did to Bron, because Bronson is bigger, which means Jacob has to work harder to break him down. And Jacob seems to relish the challenge. Multiple Samoan drops. a powerbomb that nearly breaks the ring. Repeated strikes to Bronson's ribs targeting the same spot over and over until Bronson can barely breathe. The crowd is going insane. Not just because of the violence, because of how perfectly Jacob is executing this revenge. Every move serves a purpose. Every strike targets a specific body part. This isn't a beatdown, this is a lesson in how to systematically destroy opponents who thought they were untouchable. Then comes the finale that has everyone talking. Jacob has both Bron and Bronson laid out in the ring, broken, bleeding, barely conscious. Instead of just leaving them like that, Jacob calls for a table. Samoan SWAT brings one into the ring and sets it up in the corner. Jacob positions both men, stacking Bronson on top of Bron, and then delivers a running hip attack so powerful that both men crash through the table, which shatters into pieces. The sound echoes through the arena. The visual is devastating. And Jacob Fatu stands in the middle of the destruction he created, raises his arms, and lets out a war cry that sends chills through everyone watching. That's how you execute perfect revenge. Not with emotional outbursts. Not with lucky shots. With calculated, systematic destruction that leaves absolutely no doubt about who won this war. Here's why this assault was so significant. First, it establishes Jacob Fatu as the most dangerous individual on Raw. Not just strong, dangerous. There's a critical difference. Bron is strong. Bronson is strong. But Jacob just proved he operates on a different level when it comes to inflicting damage and executing strategy. Second, it validates Samoan SWAT as a legitimate threat to everyone. This wasn't Jacob getting lucky or catching opponents off guard. This was a coordinated military operation where every member played their role perfectly. That level of organization and execution makes them terrifying going forward. Third, it sends a message to both bloodline factions on SmackDown. Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa are watching this, realizing that Jacob doesn't need their approval or leadership. He's built his own power structure, his own family unit, and he's perfectly capable of handling business without them. That creates fascinating tension for future cross-brand interactions. The locker room reaction is reportedly a mixture of awe and fear. Wrestlers are impressed by how perfectly Jacob executed his revenge. The timing, the coordination, the brutality, all of it was textbook. But they're also nervous because if Jacob can do this to Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed, two of the most protected monsters on the roster, what could he do to them if they cross him? That fear breeds respect. And respect breeds power. Jacob Fatu just positioned himself as someone you don't provoke unless you're prepared for absolute war. Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed are both dealing with legitimate injuries from this assault. Bron has a confirmed concussion from that moonsault and is looking at 2 to 3 weeks minimum recovery time. Bronson has bruised ribs and a laceration above his eye that required stitches. These aren't worked injuries, these are real consequences from a segment that WWE allowed to go hard because they knew it needed to feel authentic. And that's smart booking. You can't have someone get destroyed this thoroughly and show up the next week like nothing happened. There need to be consequences that feel real, and WWE delivered that by actually allowing Jacob to work stiff and create legitimate impact. Here's what should happen next. Bron and Bronson return in a few weeks, changed. Not necessarily face turns, but definitely with newfound respect for Jacob and recognition that they made a mistake attacking him. That leads to either an uneasy truce where everyone stays out of each other's territory, or it escalates into prolonged warfare where Bron and Bronson recruit allies to even the numbers against Samoan SWAT. Either direction creates compelling television. The worst thing WWE could do is just drop this and pretend it never happened. This assault was too brutal, too impactful to forget. It needs lasting ramifications for everyone involved. My prediction? This builds toward a massive 6-man tag at Elimination Chamber: Samoan SWAT versus Bron Breakker, Bronson Reed, and a mystery third partner, possibly someone from the Vision or another faction with their own grudge against Jacob. High-stakes match where Bron and Bronson get their shot at redemption. But here's the key: Jacob should win that match. Decisively. Because if Bron and Bronson get revenge after this level of destruction, it undermines everything Jacob just accomplished. The story needs to be that crossing Jacob Fatu has permanent consequences, not that you can eventually get even if you try hard enough. The social media reaction has been overwhelmingly positive. Fans are praising Jacob's performance, the coordination with Samoan SWAT, and how real the revenge felt compared to typical WWE beatdowns. There's genuine excitement about Jacob's trajectory and where this positions him heading toward WrestleMania season. Even people who were skeptical about Jacob's main roster potential are now believers because he just delivered a star-making performance that showcased everything that makes him special: the athleticism, the intensity, the storytelling ability, and the legitimate danger he brings to every segment. Drop your thoughts. Was Jacob's revenge justified, or did he go too far? Should Bron and Bronson get a chance at payback or accept the L and move on? And is Jacob Fatu now the most dangerous man in all of WWE? Comments below, because this might be the most brutal revenge segment of 2026. This is Wrestling News CC, bringing you coverage of wrestling's most intense moments. Subscribe for continued analysis of Jacob Fatu's rise to dominance and whether anyone can stop Samoan Swat's reign of terror on Raw. Jacob Fatu executed perfect revenge. Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed got destroyed, and the entire WWE universe just witnessed why you never cross a Samoan warrior who's been planning your downfall for weeks. This is what real revenge looks like, not petty pranks, not one-upmanship, but systematic destruction that leaves no doubt about who won. Jacob Fatu is the most dangerous force on Raw, and everyone else better take notice before they become his next target. The Samoan werewolf has arrived, and Monday Night Raw will never be the same. Hashtag Jacob Fatu, hashtag Samoan SWAT, hashtag WWE Raw, hashtag Bron Breakker, hashtag